Okay, I have decided to make another video. We'll just see how many of these I end up making. So, I decided to make one today on a question I asked myself about a million times before I did my last pro qualifying show. And that question is, should I go to nationals? So, I think there are a lot of considerations you need to make before you decide to go to nationals. And I have a whole outline here, as you can see, about those questions. So, yeah, let's just go through it. So, number one, have you gone to nationals before? If yes, did you deliver on the feedback they gave you? So, for example, a little background. So, I did my first show in 2017, and I did the same show again in 2018 with a federation called NANBF, a natural federation in the Midwest. And my first show, I was 19 years old. I worked out for like 6 months and I was like, I'm going to do a show because the person who taught me how to work out, his brother, was a 212 IFBB pro, still is, obviously. And he was like, you should do a show. And I had just graduated high school and had nothing else to do because I didn't go to college. So I was working as a makeup artist at MAC, and all my friends moved. So I was like, oh, I'm so lonely and I have nothing to do. So I just threw myself into finding a coach and doing my first show. So I did a couple shows with that coach, and she was wonderful. And then I never followed through on like my promises to myself. I was like binge eating throughout prep, not telling my coach. And even though we only communicated over email, she would call me out. She would know that I was lying because it was obvious. Like, we would not see numbers move. I would be like, oh, it's so weird that the scale isn't moving this week, even though I knew full well it wasn't weird. It was exactly in line with my actions. So fast forward to 2019, I was like, I'm going to try this again. I'm going to like prove to myself that I can do it. So I hired a new coach because my previous one went to a different career. And, I decided to do my first NPC show because that's the federation my coach at the time coached people in. So I did an NPC show during COVID. So my show like got pushed back, and then I like rebounded really hard after pulling out of that prep. And then I ended up finally doing a show at the end of the year. Like, one ended up happening in Des Moines, Iowa, Battle of Champions. And I was training for wellness that whole time because I was like, my legs are so muscular. I definitely belong in wellness. Wellness had just come out that year. And I didn't belong in wellness. So, like, a week before, I still thought I belonged in wellness, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna redeem myself to myself, because I failed myself twice when I did Bikini with NANBF, so I am gonna do this again, and I will do it right this time. I followed everything to a T, so I can do this. I mean, after I resumed the prep, I obviously didn't follow things to a T when I was binge eating. So I did that show, and I got like second and third in wellness, and there were like 3 people. I think I got like maybe second or third. I did a couple classes, and then I entered an open bikini because I was like, if I'm gonna do this show, then I want to see what I look like against like other open people, and if I qualify for nationals. Delusional. If I qualify for nationals, then I'll also do nationals in the bikini division. So, because at that point I was like, maybe I will go pro. Like, I'm not sure. Before I did my first show, I had never even been to a show. So, like, and the NPC is an entirely different beast, as they say. So I did that qualifying show, and then I ended up winning the overall in open bikini. And the judges were like, you are bikini. So I 5 weeks later, decided to do USAs, which was like the plan my coach and I had set. And I ended up doing bikini and wellness and placed dead last in bikini. Like, I showed up to the resort in Arizona. It was in Arizona at the time. And I showed up and I went in the gym, like the resort gym, and I saw the girls and I thought, oh, geez Louise. I'm definitely getting last at this show. And that was fine. Like, luckily, I was totally cool with it. And I was just inspired. I was like, wow, these people look amazing. Like, because I had doubts in my head. I was like, I feel like I shouldn't be under the impression that I might go pro at the show. But I was like hearing different things about like how I probably have the potential, blah, blah, blah. But I was like seriously doubting it. And then when I showed up, it was just confirmed. You are not going pro at this show. Not even close. And, the person, so here I was when I, if you're watching on YouTube, which is the only place I'm going to post this, I act like I have a full-on podcast. Here's the show where I won the overall in Bikini. And then I go to nationals, and this is what I looked like at nationals. So, not even close. Like, far cry from, Bikini winner. Or even placing top 15, which was fine. And for reference, this, you might know her. This is who won. Amy Delgado won USA's that year. And I saw her backstage. And I was like, wow. I was just like so amazed. So yeah, this is who won. And this is who thought maybe I could win. So, what I'm getting at there is there's a lot of considerations when you decide to go to nationals. So what are your goals? And the other moral there is just because you win an overall, which we're going to get into, you'll see it like right here, does not mean that you should go to a national show. So let's start from the top. Have you done a national show before? If yes, did you deliver on the feedback? Did they say you need more shoulders and more glutes and now you're coming in with those things? Then go for it. Do your national show if you achieve the judging feedback. And then the first question I would really ask if you have not done a national show before is what are your goals? A lot of people say, and this was me when I did USA's, is it to get experience? Like initially it started because I thought maybe I could go pro, but I knew it would be okay if it were just for the experience. But that's not the case for everyone. You need to be really honest with yourself. You need to ask yourself, if I get last place, how will I truly feel about that? And for a lot of people, they'll say, oh, if I get last, it's no big deal. It's just like fun. I love competing. I just want to have the experience. And they might think it's true, but for a lot of people, that is not true. It's like it's a hefty financial investment. And a lot of people too struggle with like the fact that bodybuilding, even though that's what it like is, a lot of people struggle with the fact that it's their body being judged, and they have trouble separating that part of it from how they personally feel about their body and how confident they feel. So like if judge feedback is you need more glutes, you might get your feelings hurt and be like, but I worked so hard on my glutes. And it's like, so did everyone else. So ask yourself, do you really just want the experience, or are you just saying that to save face in case you don't do well and people are like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know? So ask yourself that. Okay. And now, if your goal is to go pro, you want to do a couple things. One, look at your pictures objectively. How do you compare to recent pro card winners? So pictures are not going to tell you the full story. Like, obviously, there's a lot more that goes into it, and like pictures don't look exactly how you looked on stage. You might look softer in pictures, harder in pictures, or you might look spot on. But that's kind of the best tool we have a lot of the time. Like, we can't all be going to all these shows, especially national shows. They're pretty centralized in certain parts of the, like, if we're talking about the US, in certain parts of the country, like mainly on the East Coast. There's a couple on the West Coast and like, what is it? Oh, this is embarrassing. Central West? Sorry, that's, you know, I'm talking about Las Vegas, okay? That's not the West Coast, but it's Western. So anyway, compare yourself to a pro card winner. I don't think I did that. Like, I knew what Isa Piccini looked like, but I was like, she won the Olympia, you know? And I was initially going for wellness. So I was like, this is the first year wellness has even been in the US. So I didn't do that. So yeah, how do you compare? Like, say this is you, right here. How do you compare to people that are going pro? I'm not seeing, not that it's a glute ham tie contest or an ab contest or something like that, but I'm not seeing balance between the upper and lower body. My upper body is wider than my lower body here. Part of that's posing, but a lot of it's like a lack of muscle. I'm not seeing any indication of a glute ham tie whatsoever. You kind of have to have that in bikini at this point. So not kind of, you do. So if you're looking at your pictures like that, and it's like, also, this is obvious that I don't have the muscle. I don't have the muscle. So even if I got leaner than this, that wouldn't necessarily result in a better look. It could just result in a look that looks skinny, and emaciated. And what they want in bikini is someone who looks like really full and bubbly. And that how you get that is having enough size that muscle pushes out against the skin more. I mean, my boning hands aren't a good way to demonstrate that, but you see what I'm saying. So, yeah, look at your pictures. If this is what you look like, don't bother, unless you truly want the experience. Okay, so yeah, so let's say you look at your pictures and you're like, oh, yeah, I do look like these other people. Like, I look like the people who are winning pro cards. Ask yourself, is my goal to be a competitive pro out the gate? Like, am I trying to go pro? Not that it's guaranteed. Nobody is guaranteed. The stars really have to align to get a pro card. Do I want to be a competitive pro where I do this show and then in 2 weeks I do my pro debut and I'm like gunning for first call outs like at the shows I do? That's great if that's the case, and that totally is the case for some people. Like, you saw that with Amy, who I just showed you. Amy was like doing really well right away. And so was like Brittany Gillespie, who won nationals a couple years ago. They were like getting first call outs and stuff. And then there are people who like qualify within that same year, like Deraja. She qualified at her like first 2 pro shows ever right after going pro. So like some people can. But if you are like, okay, I look good enough to turn pro and I want to do a pro season, but you're going to be disappointed if like you don't look like the caliber of like placing pros, then maybe hold off. That was not the case for me. Like, when I went pro, I knew that I had like maybe just enough to get a pro card, and I was totally down to take a long break and come back hoping that I've like done enough to hopefully do well. Like, there's no way to know if that's gonna happen. That's everyone's goal, to do well. But I mean, something to remember when you turn pro is like, that could be the last time you ever win a show. So, and for a lot of people, it is. So, just being aware of that, and, like, if you do go pro, being, like, really proud of yourself, because it's a huge accomplishment, having that awareness, I think, is, really helpful. Not that you can't strive for more, but, I mean, everyone's different, and some people just have limitations that they can't necessarily overcome once they are in the pro league. So yeah, do you want to be a competitive pro, or do you just want to turn pro like I did, and you're cool with taking some time off and just seeing what happens? So that's like the category I fall into. The next thing you want to think about, so let's say you qualified for nationals. How did you do at the qualifying show? So to qualify at this point, if you win first or second place in your height class, you are qualified to go to a national show and compete at a national show. If you get third through the rest, you're not. So what you want to ask yourself, let's say you qualify, you want to ask yourself, how many people were in the class? At the show that I showed you, the qualifying show that I did, there were like, I don't know, maybe 8 people in my class, I think. And the Midwest shows, and this is not to disparage anyone who I was competing against, everyone works incredibly hard, and everyone looks great. It's like the best in terms of bodybuilding, and I say that because I don't think that I look the best when I'm that lean. I think I look sickly, but like look the best in terms of relative to bodybuilding. So I don't mean to disparage anyone, but it wasn't, it wasn't a super competitive class. Like, you saw my picture. I looked like, by the standards at that show, like, I looked good and my presence was good. Something that's always carried me through personally is stage presence and, like, just looking like I'm having fun on stage. That that's huge. Like, vibes on a bodybuilding stage are something that is not captured in pictures. And if you have an infectious presence when you're on stage, that really stands out to the judges. Like, you want to exude that confidence, exude excitement to be there. Like, that is huge. That's what gives you, like, the wow factor. Like, when someone says that so-and-so is on today, like, usually it means, like, their energy was, they looked like everything was effortless. Like, they were just happy to show up. It's not like posing and looking like you're thinking, oh, now I get my front pose. Okay, now I do my transition. It's like that fluid, effortless stage presence. So, yeah, ask yourself, how many people are in my class? And then to stack on top of that, was it a competitive class? Were there other people there that, like, were pushing me for that number one spot? That's huge. So, in a lot of shows, there are a lot of shows right now. There are multiple shows every weekend, all over. So, shows are smaller for a couple reasons. That, because there are so many, you can always just push to a show the next week for a lot of people, depending on where you live. And two, inflation. There are a lot less competitors in general now because things are so expensive. So, if your goal is to go pro, now we're just assuming our goal is to go pro. Like, I'm not thinking about if you just want the experience. So now we're thinking, if we're trying to go pro, how many people are in my class? Was it a competitive class? What did the winners of the other classes look like? Because maybe you look great, but the winners of the other classes, they look good, but they don't look like they're gonna go pro if they go to a national show. So that all falls under the umbrella of how competitive was the show. And so, yeah, if you want to do a big show to really find out, do I stack up against these other people? My goal is to go pro. You're going to want to seek out those shows. It's more expensive because you'll have to probably fly to some of these shows. Like, the shows in Texas are huge. They always have a great judging panel. If you can get in front of a pro judging panel, if you do a pro-am show, that's a show that has amateurs and a pro component. So if you're doing Bikini and you want to know, am I competitive on a national stage, then you're going to want to go to a Bikini Pro-Am show. So you want pro Bikini competitors there because those judges are going to really be able to answer the question, should you go on a national stage or not? And then you likely will have a very competitive people in your class. People are going to be pushing you for that first spot. And you'll get really great feedback from the judges. Because those are people who are judging the Olympia a lot of the time. So you want the best of the best if your goal is that high, if your goal is lofty enough, like getting a pro card. And when you're talking to judges, you need to ask the right questions in terms of your feedback. So they'll give you feedback, but do not be afraid to ask straight up, will I be competitive at nationals? Do I have a shot at looking like I belong on stage? Do I look like the other people that you normally judge? Just be very specific. And even if your goal is to go to nationals, ask, like, what do you think about this suit color? Do you think it stood out on me? Do you think my hair and makeup are the caliber they need to be if I'm going to go against national girls? Because that really matters. Your stage presentation really, really matters when you're at the national level. Because when they're choosing pros, it's like splitting hairs. Because everyone there has won a show or gotten second place. You're going against the best people in the whole region. And sometimes internationally, if you're doing a show that's international, like the Arnold Amateur or Olympia Amateur. So you really need to make sure you ask the right questions so you can make an educated decision on, should I do this or not? Of course, your coach is also going to be a resource. Does your coach think so? We're just kind of assuming that, your coach also thinks so, if you're even asking these judges. So yeah, ask them direct questions. Okay, finances. That's another really big thing. So like I said, the shows are pretty centralized in certain parts of the country, the US at least. So a lot of them are in like that Pittsburgh area, East Coast, Florida. So you're going to be paying for flights, which I live in California. So the way I chose my shows, I can do a whole video about show strategy. Because I wouldn't say that I was like the most confident about my physique. Like, I thought I had enough to maybe get a pro card in the right circumstances. And sorry, one sec. Let me go back to the winning the overall thing because I wanted to show you a comparison. So this is what I showed you. I looked like when I won my first overall, and I went to nationals. And this is what I looked like when I won the overall this year. And you can see I needed to be leaner and adjust my posing specifically for this section right here for my glutes. But I had 6 weeks to do so between this LA show and then the Arnold. So yeah, just because like both of these people have won an overall, it doesn't mean one of them should be going to a national show, is kind of what I'm saying. Okay, so back to finances. Can you afford nationals? Flights. So if I were to go to a show on the East Coast, that's going to be like maybe an $800 flight. Like if I find a deal or something, maybe $600. But depending on where you fly, that's a big consideration. And I can also do a video on how much shows cost. So yeah, flights, hotels are super expensive right now. So everything is with inflation. So can you afford a flight? Let's say a lot of the places are like $250 a night right now. If you stay at the host hotel, you want to be there for at least a couple days before the show, I would say. So if your show is on a Saturday, you want to get there by at least Thursday night. I always choose to get there Wednesday night if possible, just in case there are flight delays, because you really want as little stress as possible. And that's when this being a luxury sport comes into it. Like, being able to stay an extra day is a complete luxury. Being able to do bodybuilding in general is a luxury. Like, most people, there are a million people who are way better at this than me and have way more potential than me, but unfortunately they don't have the same circumstances to be able to do it. So having an awareness of like the finances behind all this is very important, and being grateful for even being able to do the sport is huge. So yeah, you have the hotel. So let's say you end up spending like $1,000 on a hotel, $800. You're already at like maybe $1,600 with those two things. If you go for the mid-range tan, it's going to be about like $200. Suit, you want to have a good suit. You can borrow from a friend if you have friends who do the sport. I know not a lot of people like have strong bodybuilding communities, and people's heights and stuff vary. So, borrowing a suit is not always an option. But you want to have a suit that looks pretty polished, unfortunately. So it's going to be maybe $600. So what are we at? Like $2,200. Makeup and hair, you'll probably end up spending $400 total for that, not including extensions or like a wig if you get either of those things. Then you have your entry fees for the show. National shows are $375 to enter right now, I think. Arnold Amateur, since it is not one of the official national shows, it was $275 to enter. And then if you want photos and videos from the show, because a lot of some shows, it's hit and miss. They will give you photos or they might not. But photos and videos, you might spend like $400 to get those things. Especially if you pay for like the little reels they make you. Those are more expensive. At least they were at Arnold. So it's super expensive. Can you afford to do it? And if you can't, no problem. Like, there's a reason that I needed to grow, obviously, since 2020. But like, I was in college. I ended up going to college. I was in college throughout this entire last prep, and I was in college during that 2020 prep too. So, like, it's not like I am rolling in it to just like go do the entire circuit of national shows. So yeah, can you afford it? So in more time off, like if you are being diligent with your improvement season, is going to only benefit you. Like, you'll only look better if you take more time off to build the muscle you need to be competitive on the national stage. And then if you take long enough, maybe you'll even build enough that you are one of those people, one of those wonderful blessed people who we talked about earlier, who can be competitive as a pro right away. So finances, that's huge. And as far as your hair and makeup go, you, like I said in my last video, I think, unfortunately, the sport, femininity, is a big part of it. Like, I feel so gross and misogynistic acknowledging it, but unfortunately it is the truth. Like, you have to be pretty. So you need your hair and makeup done for a national show. Unless you are like a makeup artist yourself who has knowledge of how to do bodybuilding stage makeup, because it is different. So yeah, especially at the national level, you can get away with it at the amateur level, like doing it yourself. But when it's splitting hairs, because if you look just as good as the person right next to you, and it's like neck and neck for who gets the 1 pro card in that height class, then her hair and makeup look better than yours, they look more polished than you, then you're not winning. It's them. Like, they're getting the pro card that day. So details like that really matter, and they do stand out on the stage. Like, if your face is looking like washed out, or your eye makeup is really heavy because you did it yourself and you like to wear a lot of black eyeliner, and then you get, like, I'll show you. At nationals, I looked like this. I did my makeup. My makeup looked beautiful, but not for stage. Like, it looks like 2 black holes. So you need to, and not that that's what stood in my way, like, from winning that show. But yeah, it matters. So you need to be getting your hair and makeup done. And then the other question you want to ask is, how long have you been prepping? Is your body still responding well? Like, is your coach saying, yeah, green light, we can do this? Like, your body's responding to all the adjustments we make. We're cruising into this. We might have to dig, but I think we can do this. Then great. That's awesome. Are other aspects of your life, falling back? So for instance, I did a prep in 2022, and, my body, like, kind of stopped responding after a little bit. I'll pull it up. Kind of stopped responding after a little bit. I was really stressed, and I was getting, like, such brain fog, because when you're depleted like that, you get a lot of brain fog. Then my grades started dropping, and I was like, well, my goal is to get into grad school, so I can't, like, let my hobby get in the way of me potentially getting into grad school. So I ended up pulling out of this prep. This is what I looked like at that show. I was, like, far off, as you can see. But, yeah, so, like, are other parts of your life falling behind? If so, you don't need to do the show. Like I said earlier, more time is really only going to benefit you. So, yeah. You have to have those hard boundaries at, like, the beginning of your prep. Like, if my school starts falling behind, if work starts falling behind, like, I hard stop, need to pull out of this prep. And then the last thing with how long have you been prepping is the runway you have left. So, like, cardio, for instance. Is your cardio already, like, an hour and a half a day, 7 days a week, and your national show, you still have to lose 10 pounds, and it's 10 weeks away? Like, probably not a good situation to be continuing a prep in that instance. Because let's say you lose a pound a week, when you're in those let's say it takes 1 week to lose a pound, and you have to lose exactly 10 pounds, and you're 10 weeks out. Well, once you're getting to those extreme levels of leanness, you don't usually keep trending your weight loss at the same rate each week. It gets way harder towards the very end of prep to get off that last bit of body fat. So if you are in that situation, it's either going to be you needing to push the show to, like, a national show a few weeks later, because the national show schedule is set, so just like the one after that, or taking a break altogether, getting back to some kind of maintenance, and then prepping again. So yeah, those are then the last things I have for, like, consideration. So more time is often needed. Your posing matters. So posing is huge, like we went over with this photo. So my back was not arched enough here. Like, I did have the indication of a glute ham tie, at least at this point, but since I was leaning far back with my upper body instead of leaning it forward a little bit, then I was not getting that balance from top to bottom. So I was a little wider up here than I was here. And we can see that being corrected in this photo at the Ohio show. So better balance from top to bottom here. And as you can see, like I was saying, I had like just enough muscle to squeak by and get the pro card. Not to like downplay my achievement. Like I'm very grateful. Like it was the best I ever looked in terms of bodybuilding. But it's important to be very objective with yourself. So whenever you're looking at pictures, I cut my head off the picture and I don't look at that part. I just look at the physique and I think, would I give that person a pro card? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, then sorry, hurt my own feelings. And then another thing is no matter like how good you look, there is no guarantee that you're gonna get your pro card. There are people who have done national shows like 7 years in a row and they're still like working for it, and a lot of them get it. But just because it's like the hardest you ever worked and the best you've ever looked doesn't mean that you are guaranteed anything. So it's important that like if you do a national show, you want to be open to everything that it has to offer you, like meeting new people, getting the experience, seeing what the judges say afterwards, getting on stage, and like perfecting your routine every time you step on that stage. But most people like lose, so don't get too down on yourself if you don't win your pro card at the show, because like most people be signing up to lose. Only a few people win, so, and good for them. Like we need to be happy for those people, because they worked just as hard as we did and we're shooting for that someday. So like let's cheer on the other people along the way. And then one last thing I wanted to mention was posing. Posing is so important on the national level because you can have like the best physique on stage. Say you're Laura Lee, you have the best physique on stage at this national show, but you are not posing right at all. Then someone else, some amateur, could beat you that day. Like it really is very important that you're able to display your physique. On my posing Instagram, I have a lot of like comparisons of common mistakes that people make with their posing, so you can look at that if you want to see like what I mean. And yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. If you do a national show, then just do your best. I'm sure you will, and a posing coach is going to be very important to make sure that you display like your best look. We didn't talk about like hair, suit, and tan too much. I'll do like a video on those things, but just some rules of thumb. Everyone needs the tan. Some people think that maybe they don't need the tan or can do it themselves with like some other product or like going to a tanning salon or something. I would not do that. You want to look like you fit in on stage, and part of that is looking like similar complexion to everyone else. Like it just, you want to stand out because you look so good, not because anything that's distracting is usually not good. So you want to just like blend in as much as possible and let your physique speak for itself. And then as far as your suit, a lot of people are like, oh, what suit color do I wear? Like this color looks good with my skin. Well, your skin is not going to look how it does every day. My skin doesn't look like this on stage. My skin is way darker on stage. So what looks good on my skin right now is not what looks good when I have the tan on. So everyone's going to look good in honestly pretty similar colors. So I wouldn't put too much stress on that. And then makeup and hair, you want everything to just like, you want the focus to be on your physique, and you want your makeup and hair to just accentuate like, make you look like a filtered version of yourself, basically. So you want your makeup to be natural, but like amped up glam. So you don't want your suit to match your eye makeup and stuff. You don't want to do a red lip like I did at USA's. For most people, you don't want that. And same thing with your hair, like pretty average hairstyles, just like down, straight, wavy, whatever. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. And I hope that, I hope I didn't come off too harsh. I just, I know that when I was looking at national shows, I always just felt like, are people even being honest with me? Like, am I making the right choice? Like, am I wasting my time, you know? So that's why I made this, and hopefully that comes through. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, goodbye.